Arts Plus team?
So we mostly during our program worked on narrative design, which is sort of not as commonly known area in the greater field of game design and development. It's sort of bridging the different departments of game development, from the art to the story to the UI and sound and dialogue and various elements, figuring out how they all come together to overall tell the narrative of the game, whether that's like extremely story-based or even just like a visual narrative that's like what a design directive might be going towards.
We worked with GDDI, which stands for Game Design, Development, and Innovation, which is a recently launched master's program at Duke. Their first cohort just graduated this year. And during this time, we worked with three main studios that they have primarily produced. By the time we were integrated into these studios, they had already been working together for several months, and the program is very engineering focused, with the group working to develop a capstone project, which is something they aim to complete by the end of their 2 years in the master's program in order to graduate. And because it is engineering focused, there was a little bit of a gap in narratively, and that is where we came in to supplement. And as we went along, we found that each group had different narrative needs.
So the first group that we worked with, their game was called To Be Seen. It's essentially this dual game where part of it is this sort of third person going through this like beautiful spirit realm, think like Studio Ghibli, that sort of thing. And inside of that was this whole like narrative of the parallel to that in the real world, where it was this like complex story about this tensions between this family moving countries. And so our contribution to this was we sort of worked out what the order of events and things that happened in this sub-story, sort of how it parallels, and then we worked on some like storyboards drawing out how this story might look like. And yeah, so it was that in combination with the writing.
The next game that we worked with was called Plunder Paws, and this game was centered around two characters that are stickers, one being a red panda and one being a raccoon. And they're played by two human characters who are siblings, a younger sister and an older brother. We were able to contribute to this game by each individually outlining our own narrative outline for the game, designing how we envisioned the game progressing. And we also were able to do some character design as well, deciding personalities for all four characters. And this was fun because we ended up giving all four versions to them, and they were able to compile them together and create the final copy.
And our third game we worked on was called Gravity, which is like a platformer where you can summon black holes and go to different platforms. They had a more fleshed out world and story already written, so our job was to incorporate that lore into the game through something like this. This was like a excerpt from like a lore log, which is readables that you can pick up in the game, and this just describes some of the history of the space station.
One of the things we also experimented with during this time was motion capture, which if you're unsure of what that is, it's a process of animation where you would have real people act out the motions to later be, overlaid onto a usually 3D animated model where that character will then perform the motions. Our first foray into motion capture was with a recording app called Touch Designer, which was kind of the first time we were really thinking about how our bodies were moving and how they would be captured, especially since Touch Designer took what we were, being 3D people, and only captured it in a 2D frame. As a result, we were able to learn how to be very expressive and very dramatic to get the program to understand what our intentions were and get the image that we wanted across.
So after we did Touch Designer, we then moved on to a more professional form of motion capture. We did this at the Duke Sports Science Center, where we wore the full body suits, as you can see in these images, that had sensors on our joints and important parts that define our different body parts. And then we were able to create cutscenes for one of the games that we talked about, To Be Seen. And we went through different scenes that they had outlaid and just thought with our imaginations and our own acting skills that we have to put together these different scenes. And that was a really fun experience because we were able to use what we learned from the touch designer and how we can move our bodies to put it on a screen in order to create those scenes.
Yeah. So here's something, one of the clips we recorded for motion capture. So what do you guys think is happening? Is it two people riding horses or two people in a car? Raise your hand if it's horses. Oh, sorry. Yes, it is a car. Here's another one. You guys think it's siblings arguing or a couple breaking up? Raise your hands for the first one. Okay, yes. That is the first one.
So the last project we worked on was a game of our own. We had a little bit of extra time because doing narrative ideation, it takes time for the rest of the workflow to go down the pipeline of game work and have those ideas sort of be incorporated and thought about. So we made, would you mind switching the slides? We made a visual novel called Lost in Thought. Essentially, we wanted it to sort of loosely parallel our experiences, be a little bit like meta. So it's a game about a game developer. He happens to be an indie game developer, and he released this wonderful game called One Hit Wonderland. And like they have fans being like, "When's the next game coming out?" And he's out of ideas. So he goes to his mind palace to find ideas. And this mind palace turns out to be somewhat of a labyrinth. And he comes across all of these various characters along the way that are sort of representative of good ideas and bad ideas for games. And you sort of need to suss out which games to accept, which characters to comply with, and which ones to reject.
One of the takeaways I learned from my experience during Art Plus is working with a team, both in terms of the GDDI teams and within Arts Plus. Working with the GDDI teams and being able to successfully integrate into a team that already has several months of work, I found it to be a very smooth experience, luckily, and very successful. And this is where the bulk of my learning experiences from Art Plus, I would say, came from, as it was very satisfying to just not be caught up when there's like so much to be caught up with, and being able to add more into the team even then. Working with the Arts Plus team was also very fun and helpful because we all had a wealth of different ideas that we were able to bring together to combine into an even stronger product.
In a similar vein, it was a great learning experience coming into a project already several months in development, and then having to think about it being many more months in development. The games are coming out in next spring, is when it needs to be finalized, and so the work we did needed, excuse me, needed to be contextualized within that. Thinking about what is achievable, what is maybe a good idea but too far outside of the scope for this timeline.
And it was also just a great experience to learn more about game development in general. That's a shared interest amongst all four of us, even though we all have very different majors and going about very different paths in our lives. As you can see from the fact that we made our own game, we definitely took an interest in this and are excited to use the skills that we learned.
And then the last takeaway that we had was the writing for video games is a lot different than writing for like a novel or just your own project, because there's a lot of moving parts. Like you can't just run away with the narrative because the level designers might not be able to make what you're writing, or vice versa. You can't design a level that has nothing to do with the plot. So,
So last but not least, we just want to say a round of thank yous to everyone who supported us along the way. Thank you to Ernesto and Brian, the GDDI program executives. Thank you to all of the game students who just welcomed us and were so kind to us, allowing us to help with their games. Thank you to Dr. Tim Lindsay, the K-Lab research analyst that helped us with the motion capture that we did. And thank you to Anna Wallace, our Arts Plus director. And thank you, Emily and Rose, our project managers. And before we sit back down, we actually will set up our computer here so that everyone can have an opportunity to play our game after all of the presentations are over. So we hope to see you guys again soon.